The radio telescope hummed softly in the cool mountain air as Daniel Foster adjusted its position, searching the vast expanse of space for something, anything, out of the ordinary. The Blackridge Observatory wasn't exactly cutting edge, but it was his sanctuary, a place where the boundary between Earth and the cosmos felt paper-thin. 8 years of scanning the stars had taught Daniel patience, but tonight felt different. The readings on his monitor showed unusual patterns, subtle variations in the background radiation that made his heart race. He'd seen plenty of anomalies before, but these signatures were unlike anything in his database. "Come on, show me what you are," he muttered, fingers dancing across the keyboard as he refined the telescope's focus. The patterns grew stronger, more deliberate. Not random noise, there was structure here, complexity that spoke of intelligence. A soft blue glow caught his attention from the corner of his eye. Daniel turned, expecting to see a reflection from one of his monitors, but what he saw made him freeze. There, just outside the observatory's dome window, hovered a figure bathed in ethereal light. His first thought was exhaustion-induced hallucination. Too many late nights, too much coffee. But as he blinked and rubbed his eyes, the figure remained. More than that, it moved closer, revealing delicate features that seemed both familiar and impossibly alien. Behind her, partially hidden, was a smaller figure that clung to her flowing garments. Daniel's scientific mind warred with what his eyes were telling him. The figure, clearly feminine in form but with an otherworldly grace, raised a hand in what could only be a greeting. The smaller figure, childlike in size, peeked out with eyes that seemed to hold the depth of galaxies. "I'm not afraid," Daniel said aloud, surprising himself with the truth of it. Despite the strangeness of the situation, he felt no fear, only an overwhelming sense of wonder. He approached the window slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. The alien woman smiled, an expression so human it made his breath catch. She pressed her hand against the glass, leaving traces of luminescence that spiraled in complex patterns. The child moved forward too, touching the glass beneath its mother's hand, creating smaller, interweaving patterns. Daniel found himself reaching out, placing his hand against the cold glass opposite theirs. The moment his skin made contact, his mind exploded with images, a distant world of crystal spires and purple skies, a terrible catastrophe, a desperate journey across the stars. He stumbled back, overwhelmed by the flood of information. When his vision cleared, the visitors were gone, leaving only fading patterns on the glass as evidence of their presence. But Daniel knew they would return. The patterns they'd left behind weren't just pretty designs, they were coordinates, a time, a request. Over the next few days, Daniel threw himself into analyzing everything he could about the encounter. The observatory's instruments had recorded massive energy fluctuations during the visit, proving it wasn't just in his head. The patterns on the glass faded too quickly to photograph, but he'd spent hours sketching them from memory. Each night, he waited, hoping they would return. His colleagues noticed his distraction, but he brushed off their concerns with talk of a new research project. How could he explain what he'd seen? Who would believe him? On the fourth night, as the moon reached its zenith, they appeared again. This time, the woman held something in her hands, a small device that pulsed with the same blue light that surrounded them. The child stayed closer to its mother, but its eyes held a curiosity that matched Daniel's own. "You came back," Daniel said softly, approaching the window. "I've been studying your message, trying to understand." He held up his notebook, filled with calculations and sketches. The woman's expression shifted to something like approval. She held up the device, and suddenly Daniel's notebook floated from his hands, pages turning on their own. Numbers and equations began appearing on the pages, written in a hand not his own. Daniel watched in amazement as complex mathematical formulae filled the margins of his notes. This was communication in its purest form, the universal language of mathematics. Whatever barrier existed between their species, numbers could bridge it. The child moved forward again, pressing both hands against the glass. This time, when Daniel touched the corresponding spot, the images were gentler, more focused. He saw a ship hidden in the mountains not far from the observatory, damaged but not beyond repair. He saw the woman and child, last survivors of a scientific mission gone wrong, seeking help from the only planet within reach. When the vision faded, Daniel found himself sitting on the floor, tears streaming down his face. Not from fear or confusion, but from the profound weight of what he'd witnessed, the trust they were placing in him, the magnitude of their need. The woman knelt on her side of the glass, the child beside her. In their eyes, Daniel saw not just desperation but hope. They had chosen him, whether by chance or design, and in that moment he knew his life would never be the same. As dawn approached, they faded away once more, but not before the woman pressed one final pattern into the glass. Daniel understood it wasn't just a message, it was an invitation. Tomorrow night, he would need to make a choice that would affect not just his future, but potentially the future of two worlds. Looking out at the lightning sky, Daniel felt a smile spread across his face. All his life, he'd searched the stars for signs of intelligence, for proof that humanity wasn't alone in the cosmos. Now that proof had literally come knocking on his window, and they needed his help. He gathered his notes, mind already racing with plans. There would be challenges ahead, secrets to keep, problems to solve. But as he locked up the observatory and headed home, Daniel knew that the universe had just become a much larger, more wonderful place, and he was about to explore it. The mountain path was treacherous in the darkness, but Daniel Foster pressed on, guided by the coordinates he'd memorized from the alien mother's patterns. His backpack contained basic tools, emergency supplies, and his precious notebook full of their mathematical communications. The quarter moon provided just enough light to navigate the rough terrain. He'd left his car at a hiking trail parking lot, knowing that where he was going, there wouldn't be any roads. The cool night air carried the scent of pine and sage, familiar smells that somehow felt different now that he knew Earth wasn't the only living world in the cosmos. A soft blue glow appeared ahead, and Daniel's heart leaped. There they were, mother and child, their ethereal forms illuminating the rocky path. The child, whom Daniel had started thinking of as starlight given form, moved with curious energy, dancing around its mother like a satellite in orbit. "I came," Daniel said simply, stopping a few feet away. "I want to help." The alien woman raised her hands, and suddenly the air around them shimmered. The rocky mountainside seemed to blur, then fade away, revealing a sleek vessel partially embedded in the earth. Daniel gasped. The ship was beautiful, its surface covered in intricate patterns similar to those the visitors had left on his observatory window. The child approached him first this time, reaching out with a delicate hand. Daniel knelt down, bringing himself to the little one's eye level. When their fingers touched, images flowed into his mind, but gentler now, as if the child had learned to control the intensity of the communication. He saw the ship's interior through the child's memories, corridors of living metal that responded to touch, rooms filled with technology beyond his comprehension, and a terrible moment when alarms blared and the ship plunged toward Earth. But mixed with these memories were questions, curiosity about his world, about him. "It's okay," Daniel found himself saying, though he wasn't sure if the child could understand his words. "We'll figure this out together." The mother joined them, her presence bringing a sense of purpose and urgency. When she touched Daniel's temple, the communication was precise, technical. He understood they needed specific materials to repair their ship's energy core, materials that existed on Earth but would be challenging to obtain. As the technical details filled his mind, Daniel began to grasp the complexity of their situation. The ship's damage wasn't just physical, its quantum navigation system had been compromised by what he could only interpret as some kind of spacetime distortion. Without repairs, they would be stranded on Earth indefinitely. The child tugged at Daniel's sleeve, sharing an image of their home world, a place of breathtaking beauty where crystal cities floated among the clouds. But the image was tinged with longing and fear. They needed to return, not just for themselves, but because they carried vital information their people needed to prevent a catastrophe. "Show me what you need," Daniel said, pulling out his notebook. The alien mother began transmitting detailed specifications into his mind while he frantically sketched and wrote. Some of the materials would be relatively easy to find, specific metals and minerals. Others would require careful planning and possibly some creative acquisition methods. Hours passed as they worked to create a comprehensive list and plan. The child occasionally interrupted with questions, sharing images of things it had observed on Earth: birds in flight, falling leaves, the moon's phases. Each exchange helped Daniel better understand their way of thinking, their perspective on his world. As dawn approached, Daniel realized they'd created something remarkable, a bridge between two civilizations, built on trust and necessity. The mother showed him how to activate a small communication device she'd prepared, allowing them to stay in contact even when apart. "I'll start gathering what you need," he promised, carefully storing the device in his pack. "But I have so many questions about your world, your people." The mother's response came as a series of images and emotions, a promise to share knowledge, but also a warning. There were others searching for them, forces that wouldn't understand or appreciate their peaceful intentions. Secrecy was paramount. The child made one final connection before they parted, sharing a feeling of friendship that transcended species. Daniel felt his throat tighten with emotion. In just a few days, these beings had completely transformed his understanding of the universe and his place in it. As he made his way back down the mountain, the rising sun painting the sky in brilliant colors, Daniel's mind raced with plans and possibilities. He would need to be careful, strategic. His position at the observatory provided some resources, but he would need to find creative ways to acquire the more exotic materials without drawing attention. The communication device in his pack hummed softly, a constant reminder of his new reality. He was no longer just an astronomer observing the cosmos from afar, he had become part of something much bigger, a participant in an interstellar drama that could affect both their worlds. Back at his car, Daniel paused to watch the sunrise. Somewhere up there was the visitor's home world, waiting for their return. And here on Earth was a man who had spent his life searching the stars for meaning, now finding it in the most unexpected way possible. He smiled, thinking of the child's curiosity and the mother's determination. They had chosen to trust him, and he would not let them down. The universe, it seemed, had much more in store for Daniel Foster than he could have ever imagined. 2 weeks into his secret mission, Daniel's life had become a careful balance of astronomy work by day and clandestine alien assistance by night. The communication device the visitors had given him pulsed more frequently now, sharing encrypted data about their ship's deteriorating systems. But tonight's signal was different, urgent, almost fearful. He found them at the ship's hidden location, their usual ethereal glow dimmed with concern. The child immediately ran to him, touching his hand to share a chaotic stream of images: massive ships breaking through the atmosphere, weapons of unimaginable power, worlds reduced to ash. Daniel staggered under the emotional weight of the vision. "What was that?" he whispered, though he feared he already knew. The mother approached, her expression grave. When she established their mental connection, the full truth hit him like a physical blow. They weren't just scientists on a mission gone wrong, they were refugees, fleeing from a force that had already destroyed dozens of worlds. Their ship carried crucial data about the invaders' weaknesses, information that could help their people mount a defense. But Earth lay directly in the invasion path, and time was running out. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Daniel asked, not angry but concerned. The mother's response came as a mixture of guilt and protective instinct. She hadn't wanted to burden him with knowledge that might put him in danger. The child pressed closer to his side, sharing feelings of trust and friendship that made Daniel's doubts fade. Through their mental link, she showed him more. The invaders had detected their crash landing and were already sending scouts to Earth. If they found the ship, they would discover not only the refugees but humanity as well, years before Earth would be prepared for such contact. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, mind racing. "We need to work faster," he said. "But we also need help. I can't get all these materials alone, not in time." The mother's alarm was immediate, but Daniel held up his hand. "I know someone we can trust. My friend Rebecca at the Quantum Materials Lab. She's brilliant, discreet, and she suspected the existence of extraterrestrial life for years." The child shared an image of multiple humans working together, then a question about trust and safety. Daniel knelt down, gently squeezing the little one's shoulder. "Sometimes we have to take risks to protect what matters. Your mother took a risk trusting me, right?" After a long moment of silent communication between mother and child, the alien woman nodded. She pressed her hand to the ship's hull, revealing a hidden compartment containing what looked like a small crystal. Through their connection, Daniel understood, this was a data core containing everything they knew about the invaders, including their technological weaknesses. "I'll keep it safe," he promised, carefully securing the crystal in his pack. "And I'll talk to Rebecca tomorrow. We're not letting those invaders find you or harm Earth." The next day, Daniel arrived at the Quantum Materials Laboratory where Rebecca Wong conducted her research. She looked up from her computer, dark eyes bright with curiosity behind her glasses. "Daniel? This is unexpected. Shouldn't you be up at your observatory counting stars or whatever it is you do?" "We need to talk," he said, closing her office door. "About something incredible." He took a deep breath. "Remember all those late-night conversations we had about the possibility of advanced alien civilizations?" Rebecca leaned forward, her expression shifting from amusement to intense focus as Daniel carefully laid out his story. When he finished, rather than calling security or laughing him out of her office, she sat back with a thoughtful look. "Show me proof." Daniel withdrew the crystal, watching as it caught the light and seemed to glow from within. Rebecca's scientific skepticism warred visibly with wonder as she ran preliminary scans on the object. "This material, it's impossible. The quantum structure alone." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Take me to them." That night, as they hiked up the mountain path, Daniel worried he'd made a terrible mistake. But when they reached the ship and the visitors appeared, Rebecca's reaction erased his doubts. She approached them with tears in her eyes, hands raised in peaceful greeting. The child, always curious about new things, moved forward first. When they made contact, Rebecca gasped, then laughed in pure joy. "Oh my God, Daniel. The complexity of their neural interface, it's beautiful. And their understanding of quantum mechanics makes our theories look like kindergarten drawings." The mother seemed pleased with Rebecca's reaction, sharing technical data that had Rebecca scrambling for her tablet, fingers flying as she made notes. "We can help," she said firmly. "I have access to most of these materials through the lab. The rest, well, let's just say I know some people who owe me favors." As they worked late into the night, the child moved between them, sharing images and impressions that helped bridge the communication gap. Rebecca's scientific expertise proved invaluable, helping them understand how to adapt Earth materials to work with the alien technology. But their progress was interrupted by a sudden alert from the ship's sensors. Through their mental link, the mother showed them a terrifying image: 3 scout ships entering the solar system, their designs matching the invaders' fleet. They had less than a week before the scouts reached Earth. The child clung to Daniel, sharing waves of fear and concern not just for itself and its mother, but for Earth and its people. Daniel held the little one close, making a silent vow. He looked at Rebecca, seeing the same determination in her eyes. "We'll find a way," he promised. "Whatever it takes, we'll get your ship repaired and warn your people. Earth isn't going to be another conquered world in their collection." As they made plans late into the night, Daniel realized that the fate of 2 civilizations now rested on their success. The stars above seemed to watch with increased interest, as if aware that the next few days would determine the course of human history, whether humanity would face the coming storm prepared or be caught unaware by forces beyond their comprehension. The next few days passed in a blur of feverish activity. Rebecca's laboratory became their base of operations, running complex simulations late into the night while Daniel coordinated between the alien visitors and their human allies. The child had taken to drawing elaborate diagrams that, despite their seeming simplicity, contained complex quantum formulas that left Rebecca speechless with admiration. "Their understanding of particle entanglement is revolutionary," Rebecca muttered, examining one of the child's drawings under specialized equipment. "What they consider basic science could advance our technology by centuries." She looked up at Daniel, who was monitoring the communication device. "Any change in the scout ship's position?" The device pulsed with a soft blue light, projecting a holographic display of the solar system. 3 red dots moved steadily inward, their trajectory unmistakable. "They'll reach lunar orbit in less than 72 hours, Daniel replied, his voice tight with concern. The mother appeared beside them, her form slightly transparent in the bright laboratory lights. Through their mental connection, she shared updates on the ship's repairs. The new quantum core they'd fabricated was holding stable, but the navigation systems were still offline. Without them, any attempt at escape would be suicide. The child materialized next to Daniel, tugging at his sleeve with an urgent mental message. Images flashed through his mind. The scout ships carried sensors that could detect the unique energy signature of their damaged vessel. Once in orbit, they would find them within hours. "We need a way to mask the ship's energy signature," Daniel announced, turning to Rebecca. "Otherwise, all of this was for nothing." Rebecca's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "The quantum dampening field we've been developing for the military. It's experimental, but the theories behind it." She pulled up complex equations on her tablet. The alien mother moved closer, adding her own calculations to the display through their neural interface. For the next several hours, they worked to adapt the dampening field technology to the alien ship's unique energy patterns. The child moved between them, acting as a bridge between human and alien scientific understanding. Its innocent questions often led to breakthrough realizations that neither species would have reached alone. But as they worked, Daniel noticed something concerning. Each time the mother used her powers to communicate or alter matter, her form grew slightly dimmer. The child saw it too, sharing waves of worry that made Daniel's heart ache. During a brief break, Daniel pulled Rebecca aside. "Something's wrong with her. The energy she's using to maintain physical form and help us, I think it's draining her." Rebecca nodded grimly. "I've been monitoring the energy readings." The mountain roads were treacherous at high speed, but Daniel drove with determined precision while Rebecca monitored both the approaching helicopters and the alien scout ships on their devices. In the back seat, the mother and child's forms flickered like distant stars, their energy almost completely depleted. "Military units are setting up roadblocks on the main routes," Rebecca reported, her fingers flying over her tablet. "And the scout ships, they're accelerating. We have maybe 2 hours before they're in range." The child pressed its hands against the window, sharing a mental image of a narrow path hidden from aerial view. Daniel understood immediately, turning onto an old logging road that wound through dense forest. The helicopter sounds faded, but time was running out. When they reached the hidden ship, the mother's form was barely visible. The child helped her inside while Daniel and Rebecca rushed to activate the dampening field. The massive vessel hummed to life, its surface rippling with patterns of energy that made the air itself seem to bend. "The field is holding," Rebecca announced, checking her instruments. "But these power readings." She looked at Daniel with worry. "The jump to hyperspace will take more energy than we estimated. They won't have enough reserve to maintain physical form during the escape." The child emerged from the ship, its own light dimming but its presence still strong. It shared a burst of images. The mother, already in her energy conservation state, connected directly to the ship's systems. They needed one final component to boost the power enough for escape velocity. The observatory's quantum amplifier, Daniel realized. But the military will be watching it by now. The child's response was immediate and clear: it would go with Daniel to retrieve the amplifier while its mother prepared the ship. The plan was dangerous, but they had no choice. Rebecca would stay to monitor the dampening field and complete the launch preparations. "Be careful," Rebecca said, hugging them both. The child's form solidified briefly, returning the embrace with surprising warmth. Daniel and the child raced back to the observatory in his car, using back roads to avoid the increasing military presence. The child's ability to bend light around them helped avoid detection, though each use of power made its form flicker more severely. The observatory stood dark and quiet, but Daniel could see military vehicles parked nearby. The child touched his hand, sharing a plan. Together, they approached from the blind spot in the security cameras. While the child created a distraction by manipulating energy readings on the far side of the building, Daniel slipped inside using his access card. The quantum amplifier was heavy, but adrenaline gave him strength as he disconnected it from the main system. Through their mental link, he felt the child's growing distress. The energy required to maintain the distraction was draining its last reserves. They nearly made it back to the car when spotlights suddenly illuminated the area. Military voices shouted commands to freeze. The child, its form now barely visible, looked up at Daniel with an expression of both fear and determination. Before Daniel could react, the child released a pulse of energy that temporarily disrupted all electrical systems in the area, plunging them into darkness. In that moment of chaos, they ran. Daniel felt the child's consciousness brush against his one last time, sharing not fear but gratitude and joy for their friendship. They reached the ship just as dawn broke over the mountains. Rebecca met them at the entrance, helping with the amplifier while reporting that the scout ships were entering the atmosphere. The child, now little more than a shimmer in the air, led them to the ship's core. Installation took precious minutes, each sound of distant helicopters making their hearts race. Finally, Rebecca announced, "Power levels are reaching critical threshold. They can make the jump, but..." She looked at the child's fading form with tears in her eyes. The child moved between them, sharing one last series of images, its gratitude for their help, its hope for future contact between their peoples, and a final request, to remember them not with sadness but with wonder at the vastness of life in the universe. Daniel knelt down, his own eyes wet. "We'll never forget you. And we'll be ready when they come. Earth will be standing strong thanks to you." The child's form solidified one last time for a brief embrace, then faded as it returned to the ship. The vessel's surface began to pulse with building energy, the dampening field straining to contain it. "We need to go," Rebecca urged, pulling Daniel back. They retreated to a safe distance, watching as the ship's systems reached full power. The launch was both more and less spectacular than expected, a sudden rush of wind, a brief distortion of light and space, and then the ship was gone, leaving only a fading ripple in the atmosphere. The alien scouts, arriving minutes later, found nothing but background radiation and confused military units searching empty mountains. In the weeks that followed, Daniel and Rebecca carefully covered their tracks while beginning subtle preparations for Earth's future. The child's drawings, full of advanced scientific knowledge, were safely hidden away, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Late one night, as they sat in the observatory reviewing their experiences, Rebecca asked, "Do you think we'll see them again?" Daniel smiled, touching the small crystal pendant he wore, a final gift from the child, containing a quantum signature that would let their friends find them again. "I know we will. They showed us we're not alone in the universe, and more importantly, we're not alone in wanting to protect it." He turned back to his telescope, adjusting it to track a new series of unusual energy signatures. The universe, he had learned, was full of mysteries waiting to be discovered. And somewhere out there, a mother and child were carrying word of humanity's kindness and courage to distant stars, paving the way for a future where the boundaries between species would fade like stardust in the cosmic wind.